Hello, BookTube. I've been severely neglecting Poetry Thursday, and there's no excuse for that. So I thought I would read you a poem today and we'd see what you make of it. But instead of going to an anthology, I thought I would go to a periodical. It's one of the longest holdovers, one of the biggest examples of publishing dead momentum is that most periodicals feel like they should include one or two poems in every issue. And I say this with dirty hands because I was the managing editor of a literary journal for 10 years, and we never ran an issue without a poem. Under the, frankly, 19th century idea, and even in the 19th century it was mostly fading, that a periodical should have a poem, that there'll be a readership for it, that people will care if there's a poem in there or not. It's, like I say, a very ancient holdover. I'm kind of amazed that the literary journals of any kind still do it, and yet they all do, even the avowedly political ones. The National Review has poetry. I don't get that. I don't understand that at all. Poetry has no readership. In 2023, there's just the simple fact of it. Poetry has no readership. So I don't know why magazines include that. I don't know why they give off the space, especially since most of them feel like they have to pay their poets, at least a bit, as some sort of publication for the placement of a poem, when you could absorb the block of space that takes easily into the rest of the space-hungry publication. But they all do it, including the TLS, the Times Literary Supplement. So I thought we'd read a poem from here and see if they are any good. I have had poets over the years tell me that the very worst place to go for any kind of good poetry is a paying journal that publishes poetry. It always struck me as kind of weird. If not there, then where? And I know what their answer would be. It would be hermetically sealed poetry journals from the poetry world, where the poet knows and has slept with at Yaddo all of their readers, and all of their readers know and have slept with the poets who are being published. I don't see that as being very healthy for a genre. I think that the fact that poetry has been gortoned off like that for the last, well, since the Beats, has been the number one factor in its death as a genre. So, to my mind, if I'm going to look in the wild for poetry instead of in an anthology, the first place I'm going to look is journals that aren't dedicated to poetry. And the TLS has two poems in every issue. Now, one of the poems in this issue is just gibberish, and that is the case most often. Like, for instance, the New Yorker has two poems that are gibberish. One is articulate gibberish, but it doesn't mean anything unless you personally know the poet. It doesn't mean anything unless you personally know what the poet is talking about. That is what happened with the Beats, and that has been true ever since. So a so-called poet will not observe any kind of scansion or rhyme scheme of any kind, no kind of rhythm or anything like that. It'll just be stacked words. It won't be a paragraph. Sometimes it is a paragraph if they're really lazy, but sometimes it'll just be stacked words that will say, half-eaten apple, wrapper on your chair, at the meeting, hallway, red wallpaper, red wallpaper, red wallpaper. And the two people who were there when they went to a reading high off their asses at 92nd Street Y and there was a candy wrapper on a chair, they will know what that means. It doesn't have any imagery significance unless you invest it with some. If all you're doing is recalling it for the two people who remember it, well, you're not writing poetry, whatever it is you're doing. And that red wallpaper and that hallway, that's from your childhood. Two people, again, may have heard you talk about memories of that wall and that wallpaper, but it has no imagery significance. It isn't transmittable to a readership unless you make it that way, and you have not done that. In fact, you would bridle and get your parents' lawyer to sue anyone who said it was your job as a poet to do that. So most of the poetry, I'm talking in these print periodicals, but also in poetry journals, is simply gibberish. Unless you are in the in crowd. It's the whole point of it is to draw a distinction between you and the in crowd. But there's one poem in here by Isobel Williams that at least seems to be saying something or trying to, and saying it in at least recognizable rhyme scheme. This would not be the first way that you would write this. Isobel Williams had to sit down and rewrite this to bow to the rhyme scheme, which, to put it mildly, does not happen in contemporary poetry. So it might be worth a listen. We'll see if maybe you can make more of it than I did. It's called Hold. And it goes like this. I hold the orb in my cupped hand. The scepter tilts at my command. You, the subjugated land, and I, the queen, my ship now manned. The curtained bed from post to post, harbors all your rugged coast. One room are politics and law, the minibars ours to explore, and stocks the hold for this first voyage, setting customs, tongues, and coinage. We resolve all border issues with a box of 3-ply tissues. Crush the larger world's distress to nothing in the trouser press, and make this conference of ours extend the inventory of stars. So you see that end rhyming kind of sort of works. I'm not sure that voyage and coinage work. I'm not sure that explore and law, I'm sure it don't work, and explore and voyage don't really work. But you get at least what the thing that's going for here. And the first stanza, the end rhymes do mostly work. Hand, command, land, man, post, coast. Those do largely work. The question, in other words, will not be, is this a poem? Which is obviously the operating question in most of the times when I read contemporary verse. Most of the times the answer is no. And if the people who like this stuff because they like the idea of being able to do it without studying or discipline or work or skill or craft or revision of any kind, are inevitably the ones who will call me a snob for saying it's not even poetry. But poetry is a word, it has a definition, and that means that the things that don't meet that definition aren't that thing. That's what definitions are. That's how they work. So this is definitely a poem. But so when we look past that, we wonder, well, what does this mean? What is this poem about? And I think it is about taking a trip somewhere, maybe on a liner or on a train or something like that. It's the curtain bed from post to post harbors all your rugged coast, and also the minibar is ours to explore. That leads me to think this is a temporary place. This is the cabin on a ship or a hotel room of some kind, and that the narrator of the poem is playing a game. This is now our kingdom, and we are in control of this kingdom, so we will demarcate its limitations, and we will use these things. We'll resolve all border issues with a box of 3-ply tissues that you might find in such a room. That's what I'm guessing at here. I don't think that the poem makes its conceit clear enough so that you don't have to guess. I don't think it goes so far towards real poetry as that, but I think that bears reading. I think that would hold up, and I kind of sort of liked it. I've got the TLS right here, and I've got a pair of scissors right there on the windowsill. It is that easy for me to clip this out and save it. I'm not going to, so I didn't like it that much. I didn't like it enough even to do that. That is a tiny amount of effort, and I'm still not going to do it. There will be things from this TLS that I would clip out, but not the poem. But it's curious. On Poetry Thursday, we almost never read anything that was written this year, and that had to have been written this year. So what did you make of it? What did you make of Hold by Isobel Williams? But anyway, that's Poetry Thursday. Didn't want it to linger on without me. I'll try and remember for next Thursday. We'll wrap this up for now, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.